Hi, so we're super high energy today, and we wanted to say thank you to today's favorite patron person, Love to D, which means that it's probably a homosexual. So thank you. Oh, it's Pride Month. Happy Pride. Happy Pride, Love to D. Thanks for being a patron and giving us your money because we're poor and we need it. We're commoners. So, all right, so there's that. We got that out of the way.
Welcome to the Horror Hour.
We
all go a little mad. We get you.
You are going to die tonight.
Hi, hello. Welcome back to the Horror Hour, where we discuss, debate, and disagree on all things horror. I am everyone's favorite co-host, Nick of Nick Says Boo, and I am joined by everyone's second favorite co-host, George. Say hello, George.
Hi, I'm your favorite YouTuber's favorite YouTuber.
George is in another galaxy right now. Just bear with him. So, in honor of the new movie releasing within the last, I don't know, like month or so, we are going to be discussing the Strangers franchise as a whole up until this point.
Yeah.
So we've had 3 movies so far. We had the original film by Brian Bertino, which came out in 2008.
Yeah.
And then that was followed up a couple years later with The Strangers Prey at Night, which was not Brian Bertino, if I remember correctly. But I think it was based on a script. Because, okay, we'll get into that. And then we have the newest one, which is The Strangers Chapter 1, which just came out in theaters and is now already on streaming, which makes sense. And that is part 1 of a 3-part trilogy. So they're doing Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you've watched the newest one, then you've Godspeed. You've suffered through it just like the rest of us. But yeah, so what is your? Did you see the original one in theaters?
So no, I was too young to see it in theaters. But I remember seeing the trailer and being transfixed by the Quicksilver girl, and again like quick, and I was like, oh my god, this is like the best trailer ever, and I still stand by top 10 trailers of all time. But no, we didn't see it. But then we watched it like it came out like on stream, not even stream, sorry, pirated it. We were like, oh my gosh, it was so good, and just the tension was fantastic. But yeah, I wasn't old enough to see it in the theater, but I wish I was, because I imagine it was amazing.
It was. Let me switch this around so that you're more near my camera eye line. There we go. Ooh. So I did see the first one in theaters. I don't think I saw the second one in theaters, but I did see the first one in theaters. I remember being whatever age I was in 2008. Okay, so I would have been 17 because that was a year before I graduated high school. So I don't remember why. It was shortly, like in and around when Scout Taylor Compton was announced as being the Laurie Strode in the Rob Zombie movie. And that was back in the day where like it was a lot easier to talk to celebrities. So I mean, she wasn't like big or anything at that point. So I remember we were Facebook messaging each other, or at back that point it probably was MySpace. And I remember sitting in the theater, and I was just telling her how excited I was to see her in the new movie, and yada yada yada. We were just talking about scary movies, and they played the trailer for The Strangers, and it was kind of a noisy theater. And the second that he walks out behind her into the frame, you heard everyone just go, and then silence.
Yeah.
And that was just like a moment that has stuck with me because of how just shocking that was to everybody. And it's one of my favorite horror movies. I know a lot of people have complained that the characters are stupid, and if I urge them to watch the newest one, if you want to see stupid characters, but fantastic soundtrack too. Like that's like what the soundtrack is like. Where the do you even find that kind of music?
I don't know. You must have to I don't even know what you Google.
Right, but it's amazing. Sprout and the Bean and all, and the way that they did the tension. each and every single time that you hear the knock on the door and you see them all like sort of like subtly jump because they're scared too. I love it. I love it. Now, before we discuss the second one, though, there was do you remember off the top of your head when the second one came out?
Was it 2014 or 2016?
Let me Google.
Or is it another time completely? Because I remember 2018. I remember for a long time after the first one came out, there was like teasing that there was going to be a second film with Liv Tyler in because of the whole thing at the end, and that never came into fruition. Though.
So the entire script that he had written for the second movie, had been on like leaked maybe like within 2 years after the first movie came out, and what is shocking is that the vast majority of it, like the whole thing with being set at a trailer park, that obviously made it to screen. And a lot of people were shocked when they announced it and they announced the plot because they're like, this is the script that like we've all read this. This has been on the internet for almost 10 years at this point. That's crazy that they didn't bother writing something new. I mean, it still worked out in their favor, but yeah, the entire plot with being in the trailer park, all of that is in the script. I read that. Now the opening of the script, which is not the opening of the actual movie, does bring back Liv Tyler, and basically what happens with her, the original opening was she is now living with her parents and she's recovering from her injuries. So I think it's supposed to take place like maybe like a couple weeks after. It's not a long time. It's a couple weeks because she's still like struggling with like healing from like the stab wounds and stuff like that. And she's upstairs in her old childhood bedroom. The mom comes in and says something and it's like, everything's going to get better. I'm sorry about James and yada, yada. And then you hear a knock downstairs and the parents go downstairs. They don't come back up. She hears another knock and she just sort of like has like a feeling like, oh, and she manages to crawl downstairs where she notices that the front door is open. And if I remember correctly, she does see the parents' bodies and she's, oh my God. So it's very similar to like at the end of the first one where she's just crawling. And she sees cars passing on the road and she's crawling towards the door to get out. And then you see the masked guy appear in the house behind her. And then if I remember correctly, he just hits her with the axe, kills her, and it cuts to the title card.
Okay.
So she does get got.
So it was just going to be like a scream sort of thing where it's like, oh, you think she's going to be the lead.
Yeah. So they obviously did not keep that, but I haven't read the script in a while, but I do like the trailer park. I think the vast majority of it is pretty similar. I don't remember if there was like the pool sequence, but in general, the second one, The Strangers Pray at Night, a very different tone than the first one. What did you think of the second one?
Yeah, I appreciated it more on a second viewing the first time I watched it because I was so enamored by the style of the original and that just the tension that it brought and just the claustrophobia of it all. This then felt like a different film, so obviously I was a bit like, ooh, taken aback at first. But then when I kind of watched it on a like second and third time, I was like, okay, I can appreciate it now as its own thing, and I think it does. You think, yeah, you can do The Strangers in this more 80s campy vibe, and it still works. It's almost like when you have I don't know, like another director of a Marvel film where it's like the shift or the tone slightly changes, but the story stays the same. So I really did enjoy it. I enjoy it more now, but yeah, when I first watched it, I was like, no, I want the creepy tension building one. But yeah, now I like both of them like equal. The first one a bit more, but both equally, I can see them as great pieces.
The first one is definitely still one of my favorite movies. I love the second one, but I would agree with you that when I first saw the second one, I felt very weird about it because it was just such a drastic change in tone. I still think it's still very good. It still has some really cool imagery. I really like the soundtrack. It has a lot of atmosphere. And I do like that I do like that we actually got to see one of them and that they got taken out, but I don't necessarily know how I feel about the fact that they all got taken out.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that extremely limited the story. Like we could have continued having more and more. Now, obviously, they didn't really say like where in the timeline. I'm assuming it's supposed to take place after what happened in 2008, but you really don't know because I don't think they explicitly state what year it takes place in. So I guess that's still sort of, if they were to do like a Halloween situation or something and they were to go back and revisit the original timeline, they could just have, you know, attacks happening wherever. You're not really bound to like continuity. I don't think that will happen given the new movies, but yeah. Which brings us to the new movies. So, like I mentioned in the beginning, there's 3 of them. The first one has already come out. The next 2 are scheduled to come out within the next year. And all 3 of them are starring Madelaine Petsch from Riverdale. And so the first one, which has just recently come out, is basically a loose retelling / remake of the original film. And then part 2 and part 3 are supposed to be very drastically different and do its own thing. So I would say I am excited to see what they're going to do with the next parts. But I was not a fan of part 1. What did you think of part 1?
Yeah, I mean, it was very much like somebody had done a student film of The Strangers and like in homage to it. But it wasn't. I was like, there was just so much of it that I was like, this is like line by line the same. And I hated when they changed the line. And they were like, oh look, people were going, oh well, they couldn't be because you were home because it wasn't their home. And I'm like, well,
that doesn't make sense.
I'm like, how did the strangers know anyway in the first film that was their home? They weren't watching them anyway.
Exactly.
The line should always stay the same. But it was just a little bit weird. And then like the random ass like post credit scene, it was like some sort of like Avengers moment. And then I'm just like, do we really need 3 films to understand that she's going to become one of the strangers by the end of it? No, we don't. So we could do that.
Is that your prediction?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because I had sort of expressed when I reacted to the trailer that I didn't like the fact that they announced that she's going to be in all 3 of the films. Because I'm like, if she doesn't become a stranger, then you just sort of lose any sort of tension whenever she's under attack because you know that she's going to make it out to the next film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I watched Riverdale like for the first 3 seasons, and Madelaine Petsch can act, and the performances in this movie were abysmal. Yeah. Abysmal. There's so much about this new movie that doesn't make any fucking sense, and obviously, you know, by the time that this comes out, my reaction should have dropped. So watch that. But carbonation. But I'm assuming that a lot of the things that I thought that didn't make sense about this newest one are like plot threads that are supposed to be answered in the future ones.
Right.
But like the thing, I don't understand why everybody in the town was really fucking rude for no reason. When they walked into the diner for the very first time.
Yeah.
I didn't catch this upon my first viewing, but when I started to do my initial edit to the reaction, I caught it. The 2 people, so the waitress that takes their order, and then the 2 people that are sitting there that talk to them about like, oh, like my name's Eden, his name's blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like it's our anniversary. Yeah. Those are the 3 strangers.
Oh.
Because the 3 strangers, you have the one like medium build guy. You have a girl that is pretty close. Like she's a little shorter than him, but they're like a couple because you see later on in the movie at one point, like they're like canoodling togetger in their costumes or whatever. And then there's one who's very, very short and skinny, which is the waitress. So I was like, okay, so now we have our strangers, and clearly there's something going on in the town that the town is in on it because they clearly up the car, which is exactly what the guy said. Yeah. And then when he goes to order the hamburger with no burger or whatever, she tries to give him a pamphlet for like a local church meeting
Oh yeah.
or something, and he's like, nope. So yeah, there's quite clearly. Also, he doesn't have any dialogue, which I thought was very, very strange. But when they walk into the diner, the camera cuts to like a police officer sitting there a couple of times, and like he's a fairly known like horror movie actor. He's in majority of the Rob Zombie movies. Have you seen Rob Zombie's Halloween 2?
Yeah.
Do you remember during the bus, when the bus crashes in the beginning and he gets out of the van and then he grabs the shard of glass and he decapitates the guy?
Yes.
That's the guy that he decapitates. So like in my reaction, I was like, oh my God, like he's here. Cause like I see him at the conventions all the time.
Yeah.
And then he has no other scenes, no dialogue in the movie. I was like, that's weird to have him randomly being in there. But yeah, the movie is horrible. And the dialogue is also very, like the sound mixing is very bad in the movie. I noticed this during editing, that I constantly had to keep raising whenever they were talking because you could barely hear a word that they were saying.
Right.
But yeah, so putting all of that aside, everything that we've said, what would you say in the first movie? What's your favorite sequence?
I mean, I think obviously the scene where she's on her own and the sequence of her in the kitchen is still obviously an iconic one. So that's one of my favorite ones. And then I just really love the is Tamara home? And that whole sequence is like one of my favorites. And just like the way, that's those two are like my favorite scenes that I like when I think about The Strangers. I think about that scene and then that scene, and then obviously the "because you were home" is like one of the best lines ever.
Agreed. What about the second movie? What's your favorite sequence?
My favorite sequence is the pool scene.
Pool sequence.
Like that's the one. Like when I was watching the film for the first time, I was like, "Oh yeah," I wasn't really getting it, but then that whole sequence, I was like, "Okay, now I understand. Like I get it now." And when I think about that film now, that's the one I think about the most. And then obviously the truck being on fire and him like driving with the truck on fire. What
do you have a favorite sequence in the new one?
The credit scene. The credits probably my favorite when they started rolling. And no, there was nothing in. I was like, because all of the homages to the original were like shit. So they weren't even done like on the sly. It was just so like in your face, and I was like, okay. And then the rest of it wasn't. That was just not great. I didn't like it. Yeah.
So I would say for me, the original film, I would echo what you said. Him appearing behind her, I think, was incredibly scary. But the other, I think what the original one did the best that the newest one suffered from when trying to pay homage and recreate some of the same story beats is there was a lot of subtlety in the first one. Like, yes, you see him appear behind her, but aside from the girl at the door, you don't know how many there are until later on in the movie. And you only see him lurking in the house that one time. Yeah. So what pops out to me that just sank my stomach when I first watched it was when the smoke alarm goes off and she's trying to like turn it off and it falls. And then when she goes and she changes her clothes, which was smart because she was like, I'm going to have to fight for my life. I need to change. And then she comes back out and realizes that it is now picked up off the floor and is sitting on the chair. There's just like it's just so subtle. And I'm like, and she doesn't even scream. She's just like, no, shit. I'm obsessed with that. The second one, I do love the pool sequence, but I really love the sequence where he kills the dad in the car because it's just so creepy, and he's just so like chill about doing it. And there's like a weird intimacy when he's like staring into his eyes, watching him die.
Yeah.
I love that sequence so much. And then the new one, the only thing that I really was, I did like when she sits down and she's playing the piano and you see him reflected in the mirror behind her.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of like it kind of reminded me, like, as the Scream franchise has gotten further and further, where it feels like the villains are a little bit more supernatural now.
Mm-hmm.
Where there was moments in which he, like, they would appear behind them and then suddenly disappear. And I'm like, how the fuck did they do that without being noticed or anything like that? Like when she's in the shower, all she does is step forward and then step back and he's gone. And I'm like, where did he go? There was nowhere for him to run to. So quite obviously he dropped down. But they play Nights in White Satin in the new one. And that's my second favorite song of all time. So the movie, as horrible as it is, it gets a little bit of credit for that.
What's your favorite song of all time?
Bad Romance.
Oh,
As it should be, because it's the greatest composition ever made. Who do you think is Tamara?
I like to believe that the original strangers are a family, and that they had a young daughter called Tamra who got into trouble. Something happened with somebody else. She died, and they think this person killed her. And so the first one of them going to the house and being like, "Is Tamra home?" And that's because they think that she's behind it. And then it just got stuck, I guess. I don't know.
Interesting.
Who's Tamra to you?
I always sort of thought that it was probably like a reference to just the first people that they attacked. Like the first ones that they attacked, they probably knew.
Mm-hmm.
Like they probably like killed whoever Tamara was and then went to their family's home and killed Tamara's family, which is why they're asking if she's home. And they've just continued that motif each time they went and attacked somebody. But I will say that I think, given that we have two more movies coming out and it's supposed to be drastically different, and obviously they're going to probably add a lot more lore in, like with all the shit going on with the town and everything like that. So it's probably going to be very different. I would imagine they're probably going to explain in this one who Tamara is. But if I ever meet her, I'm a fighter.
Maybe she was like somebody who was killed by outsiders. And so every time the outsiders come, it's just like a ritualistic thing.
Probably. Oh god, it's gonna be bad. Like the newest Wrong Turn movie.
Oh,
Oh my god, I forgot I even reacted to that. That was so long ago. That movie was.
that wasn't great.
But then again, I only like the original Wrong Turn. So
I can't even remember which ones I've seen. I definitely saw Wrong Turn 4.
I've only seen the original, the second one, and then I think I started the third, and I was like, I can't do this. It's too much for me. And then I've seen the newest one.
Fair. What do you think then from the franchise needs to do? What does the next movie need to be in order to like be like, oh, well, this is something?
So I don't know how many that they like. I don't know if they've already filmed the second one or the third one. I don't know.
They filmed all of it.
Oh god, because I was gonna say they should take the feedback from the first one and try to improve upon it. But I don't know because it's like I don't feel Rennie Harlan, who directed the newest one. Obviously, he's got some duds in his filmography, as most directors do. Even Wes Craven did. But like he directed Deep Blue Sea, which is my favorite shark movie of all time. It's absolutely terrifying. And he directed Nightmare on Elm Street 4, which is a good installment in franchise. So he's quite clearly capable of good direction and you know, sequences and stuff like that. I'm hoping because those two films are a little bit more like action oriented a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that he doesn't try to stick to making it scary, because I feel like this first film shows that maybe within this universe, that's not where he excels. So if it is supposed to be drastically different, I hope he leans into that. Just make it drastically different.
Yeah.
So that we're like, okay, we've established these characters in the backstory, but I don't want them trying to like recreate beats from Prey at Night or anything like that.
Yeah.
Do your own thing so that I'm not comparing it to something, because I feel like if the original Strangers didn't exist, I would still think that this movie wasn't very good, but I would have been a little bit lighter on it. It would have just been a stupid slasher movie. Wouldn't have thought that much more about it. But being able to, I mean, you have to compare it to the first one. It's not even like the first one came out that long ago, so like it's bound to happen. And just seeing where it was done better. Yeah. I'm like, please stop trying to recreate something that you're not able to do. Do your own thing, and then I'll probably like it a little bit more. So as long as they just do their own thing and make it very, very different than what's come before, that's all I can ask. Because, dear God, what about you?
Do you know what I'd really like? And it's probably like nobody else like this, but maybe it's me. That it became like an anthology series and or an anthology movie series, and the three strangers are like throughout time. So like there's like one in Victorian times where they come and do that'd be really cool, and then like maybe some like Roman time one, and then there's like futuristic one, or like 1950s one, sort of like 60s, like the Manson or something, and it's all different, the same story but in different times, different scenarios. Like the strangers just become like a villain themselves.
You could almost like make it like I don't know about going back to like Victorian and Roman times, but I mean I'd watch it, whatever. But like the Tamara murders or something, where it's almost like a similar like ish thing to like Ghostface. Maybe not like as publicized within that that universe where it's like movies and shit. Where it's just sort of like a thing, like every so often like murders happen because weirdos like read about this shit on the internet, and then they decide to have their own thing, and that could be like the anthology, whereas each installment is just a new group of people attacking another group of people in a different location. I think that would be pretty cool. Your concept reminds me of, I'm sure you've read them, like how she said Stab 5 is time travel. Like the actual plot is like Ghostface goes back in time to kill Sidney Prescott's ancestor.
Yeah.
I would watch that movie.
No, but I think like I love, like imagine like the others. I'm not saying like Victorian, but like the others, and so say like to me that's a bit like Strangery in a sense, because you have the three housekeepers. They could be like the strangers, and then these rich women are like, oh my God, what's going on? But
so we've had a house, we've had an Airbnb, and we've had a trailer park. Where keep it present day, but like what other locations would you think would be really, really cool?
I mean, I was gonna say like maybe like some sort of Evil Dead Rise apartment situation. Like sort of like maybe there's a building left in a derelict area of one of the cities, and like there's only a few people there living there, and everyone else has moved out, and this like the strangers. Alexa, please be quiet. Yeah, and then like they come in and terrorize like the last few people, and it's like each floor they go up a floor or something. That might be quite cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. Like an apartment would be cool. Like a mansion, like a big mansion in the middle of nowhere would be really, really cool. But I'm trying to think like I guess I kind of think in general like other places where maybe you've sometimes seen like a movie take place in, but like it would be cool to have a slasher movie take place in a water park. Or like an amusement park. I mean, I know we have like Hellfest and stuff like that, but I just think like that would be a cool concept to do. I would love, I'm sure one exists, to have a slasher movie take place in a mall. Yeah, like, kind of like the opening of the first Fear Street. Yeah, I think that would be really, really cool. But yeah, I don't know. we'll see with the new like part 2 and part 3, because if it is going to be drastically different, I don't necessarily know if it's going to be like them knocking on doors and attacking people.
Yeah.
So we may not have like, oh, what's the location going to be for part 2? It could just be something different. It could be like a crime story of her trying to track these down.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's not like she had much fight in the first movie, but what would you say, like the music, the top 3 songs from overall the franchise so far? Because I do feel like they are sort of, maybe not so much as the original, the newest one, but first 2 are definitely kind of known for their soundtracks.
Yeah. Number 1 would always be Quicksilver Girl. Just because I used to listen to that like record scratching version of it like 24/7. I used to have it on my little iPod, and I'd run around the house. My parents went there pretending I was being chased. It was like Quicksilver, Quicksilver, and I'm like, no.
You know that the meme, I think it's like Trisha Paytas or something, and she's like running and she's like, oh my god, no, and there's like somebody dressed as Ghostface just like walking behind her. I'm like, I could imagine like your parents are like cooking and like you're just like running through like, oh no.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why they said you can't live with us anymore. But yeah, I think something like that.
I think the first one, Quicksilver Girl, Sprout and the Bean, and Mama Tried. Mama Tried is what plays when the friend shows up.
Oh yeah, that is.
And he's walking through. Those are the 3, like the ones that really stand out for me from the first one. The second one, I think of Kids in America, the opening with the logo. Yeah. Can we talk about the logo for Pray at Night? That is so beautiful looking.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Kids in America, and then I think We're Alone Now. But I don't know. So, like, I don't remember where that. I don't think that plays in the movie. I think We're Alone Now. I think that was just in the trailer.
Yeah, because the one I would say is Total Eclipse of the Heart.
That's the pool sequence, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. And then the new
one.
No,
I think We're Alone Now plays in the car. I'm sure.
Is that what's playing when he rolls up?
Yeah, I'm pretty
sure. Side of her.
I'm sure it is.
Oh,
or maybe that's what they played. Maybe they just played that in the trailer, because I think maybe they switched the music so it went into the thing. Actually, I haven't watched it in a while. The second one.
Yeah, I've just been like seen a bunch of reactions to it lately. I will say that one thing that should be pointed out is how they always start with, this movie is inspired by true events or whatever. Mm-hmm. The true event is literally Brian Bertino. When he was a kid, his family had a summer home, and some girl randomly knocked on the door at 4 a.m. and asked for some, I think it might have been Tamara. And they were like, no. And then she just wandered away, and they thought it was really weird. And that just stuck with him. So he made a full movie out of it. So it's not like, I mean, shit like that does happen. I don't know if he ever confirmed it. I know we've talked about this, I think, during the episode where we talked about like true crime stuff that's happened. But the Ketty Mountain murders, or the Ketty Cabin Mountain murders, is something that a lot of people have said is quite clearly inspired the first Strangers. So without getting too deep into the case of it, it was basically a family that was at a cabin community in the mountains, and the daughter, because there was like 3 kids, I think. The daughter went for a sleepover at one of the neighboring cabins with her friends, and when she got home the next morning, her entire family had been murdered, and they were like tied up to the chairs and stuff like that, and they never found out who did it. There was no evidence, no trace of anything. It's like a huge mystery. And the part that like stuck in my mind the most was when they were talking about like how brutal it was. They said that, I think it was like the dad, he had been stabbed with a butcher's knife like 80 times or something, but one of the stabs, I think it was like in his head, was so aggressive and so hard that it literally bent the knife in half. I'm like, that's anger. So that's, if you read up on that, that's crazy what happened. And then obviously, the second one, not actually based on anything. But I will say that the one thing with the second one that I really, really do like was all the homages that they do to classic horror movies.
Yeah.
So the car on fire, or the truck on fire when it's chasing her, is an homage to Christine.
Yeah.
The end sequence with her getting on the truck is an homage to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I know that there's other ones. The only sequence that I don't like in the second one is when they kill Christina Hendricks, because she literally just stands there and accepts the knife.
Yeah.
She doesn't even attempt to fight.
She's had enough by that point. She thought, you know what, I'll just go now. Save face.
Yeah, but yeah, that's all I have to say on The Strangers.
I would think The Strangers, I'd like to see a game of it.
Like in the this vein of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and all that shit.
Similar, but I think like an actual psychological game where you can either play as a stranger or as a victim, and it's only like a shortish game, but like you can kind of, it's got like good like creepy atmospheric qualities to it.
I would definitely play it. I would love them to make an animated mini series. But like almost treat it like you would like a normal movie, like other than the fact that it's animated. Like I feel like we don't really have a lot of those just animated slasher. I remember I don't even think it was an official thing, but it was before Scream 5 or Scream 6, where it's like a 5-minute anime version
that
of
rings
Scream.
a bell. Yeah, that rings a bell.
Oh, yeah, it's something like that. I don't know. I just want more horror animated stuff, but
yeah,
that's all I have to say because I have to go to the bathroom.
Well, thank you so much, Nick. Thanks to everybody for watching. If you enjoyed our content, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We have a Patreon, links in the description box below. And for anything else, you can find Nick on Nick's channel, which is
Nick Says Boo, also Patreon, Twitter, X, Instagram, all that jazz.
And you can find me at George Alexander. Have a great one. Look after yourself. Stay safe. Good night.
And stay hydrated. Please, God.
Stay hydrated.
You have been listening to the Horror Hour. See you next time.